Hey, continuing our Monday crossover, I did a little bit of homework.
Mm,
Um, I was thinking about the Yankees, and the Yankees today won on a dramatic home run by Andrew Benintendi. And it was his first home run since coming over from the Royals. I had asked if Andrew Benintendi and Joey Gallo did a Freaky Friday and swapped bodies because Benintendi, who was having a fine all-star season for Kansas City this year, has been nothing but garbage since arriving in New York. And
yeah,
Joey Gallo's been hitting the snot out of the ball in Los Angeles with the pressure of pressure of New York removed from his shoulders. But give Benintendi credit today in a game where the Blue Jays came back, and another former Red Sox was involved in that rally, Jackie Bradley Jr., who came
that's
back to
right.
haunt the Yankees all weekend. Benintendi hit a home run, gave the Yankees the lead, and give Aaron Boone credit that he handled his bullpen by instinct and not by sabermetrics, and he let Trevino just finish the last 2 1/3 innings saying, hey, you're pitching well. Why am I going to take you out? And he wound up closing out the game. It was a dramatic win, as was the Josh Donaldson Grand Slam earlier this week. But guess what? There were dramatic wins to avoid sweeps at home against division rivals.
Mm-hmm.
They lost 3 out of 4 to Toronto. They lost 2 out of 3 to Tampa after losing a series to the Red Sox. And there was when Donaldson hit that home run, the Grand Slam with the ultimate Grand Slam, down by 3, bottom of the 10th of the 11th. He hits the walk-off Grand Slam. They win by 1, and they're going to get some momentum behind this. They lost their next 3 games. And so now they're going to go face the Mets. Now, right now, the Yankees' record in 2022 is 74-48. That's still a terrific record. Any Yankee fan would have signed off on that at the beginning of the year. Now, last year they went 92-70. And if you talk to Yankee fans, you would have assumed they lost 120 games last year, the way they talk about last year's team. But I want to bring this up. There's a 162 game stretch, taking the final 78 games of 2021 and the first 84 games of this year, which is roughly, approximately 4th of July to 4th of July. I may be off a day or two, but it's the final 78 games of 2021. The Yankees were 20 games over 500. The first 84 games of this year, they were 61-23. You take that 162 game stretch, that's 110-52 would have been their record. That's a .679 winning percentage. That would be the second best Yankee team playing a 162 game schedule in their history. Only the 1998 Yankees would have had a better record, and only the 27, 32, 38, 98 Yankees had a better winning percentage than that. And those are teams with Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Joe DiMaggio, and the 98 team. That's the level of Yankee team that was sandwiched in between their mediocre start and their being bad in the second half. Because the first 84 games of 2021, there were 2 games over 500, and the last 37 games, they're 13-25. So what I'm saying is there's a 121 game stretch where they're 10 games under 500. They've had a great team sandwiched between a bad team. They just didn't have that 162 game stretch starting on opening day. This Yankee team's not good. And it's amazing to watch them. It's amazing to see that in the middle of it, they were great. I guess is my weird point.
Yeah, no, I loved your point, Sully. I got a little lost there for a second. It was like a maze, but you summed it up perfectly at the end. I totally agree. Not good. That's how I feel about the Yankees as well, because right now it's a weird vibes around that Yankees team. Like we've discussed, I don't even think they've won a series in the month of August. And
they haven't.
Yeah, and we did pods a couple months ago where we were like, can the Yankees win 120 games? And now you look back at those pods and you're like, those did not age well, because this is why teams don't usually win 120 games, because you go through lulls of the season like this, but usually don't see World Series, championship level teams go through a month of a season where you just don't win any series in that given month as well. So it's a very weird time for the Yankees right now. It looks like they're trying to motivate themselves. You can see the frustrations boiling over a little bit in today's game with Garrett Cole going out there and doing his fake tough guy routine, trying to fight Alek Manoah because Aaron Judge got plopped in the shoulder. Like, Garrett Cole, sit down. You're making a lot of money. You know you're not going to go out there and get in a fight. Like, that's just not who you are, Garrett Cole. It's okay. We like the fake tough guy persona. You try to hype up your teammates and do a little bit of that, show a little fake bravado. That's okay, Garrett Cole. You don't have to be that guy. Right now, for the Yankees fans, I don't know what to tell you. I wouldn't feel good right now if I'm a Yankees fan, because you look at the Houston Astros, a team like that is just ascending as the season goes on, while the Yankees are just going in the opposite direction right now. So if you're the Yankees fans, like, I don't know how to feel. I don't know if if this season does not end in a World Series, or if this ends in like the divisional round or the wild card round, like, do you fire Brian Cashman? Are you doing fire Aaron Boone again? Like, I don't know how this ends for the Yankees. I just know we're at the point of the roller coaster right now where you're like, this is not a very fun ride, and I want to get off right now.
I will say this, because I've been very much anti Brian Cashman for a long time.
Mhm.
And I also think sometimes you have to shake the proverbial Etch-a-Sketch, because sometimes a change is good. I mean, he's been
I
there
agree.
for so long, and you're really hard pressed to see. Judge has been developed by the farm system. He's a superstar. I mean, what else has their farm system yielded
Produce.
that has been outstanding? And also, this is the second decade where we're now a couple of years into the second decade without a Yankee pennant. And at some point, you've got to say, okay, they're building teams that this team is not going to go far in October. You put this team up against Toronto in a best of 5 series, against Seattle in a best of 5 series, against Tampa in best of 5 series, even Cleveland's pitching, and I mean, there isn't a team that's a playoff team right now that playing right now that I would pick the Yankees over at this point.
Yeah, and the thing with Brian Cashman is, like, he knows how to build a 90-win team. Like, we've seen that year after year. He could build a team that could get pretty deep in the postseason. And just, he always builds these flawed rosters. Like, when you compare his teams to, like, the Astros of the past or the New York Mets this year, it just never feels deep from top to bottom, from that lineup to rotation. There always feels like there's a missing piece when it comes to one of the teams that Brian Cashman built. So, like you're saying, like, he's been there for a long time, and sometimes you just need a new voice, a new direction. I just feel like maybe the direction, maybe the Yankees need a new philosophy in their front office right now.
Well, I will say I gave Cashman a lot of grief in this offseason for not acquiring one of the star shortstops that were out there and settling for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. Now I will say that the shortstop that I felt that they should be going after was Corey Seager. I thought Corey Seager's, World Series MVP has what happened to my light? World Series MVP. That was Brian Cashman's ghost was taking over. I'm a little sensitive to that right now because we did have a blackout in my house earlier today, so I just want to make sure everything's okay. Okay, there's my ring light. Corey Seager I thought was a great fit, and he has been playing pretty well for Texas this year. I think he would have hit 40 home runs in Yankee Stadium. But the other shortstops that were out there, Correa and Baez and Story, I think there's another one that I'm not thinking of right now. They've all kind of busted this year, or at least Correa's been a bust, but he's been a disappointment.
Yeah, he's been all right.
And guess what, folks? Unless the Twins make the postseason and Correa has a great postseason, you're going to see Correa in Minnesota next year. He's going to take that option and say, I'm going to stick around and make superstar money for one more year.
You think?
Yeah, I think so. Because who's going to offer him an 8 or 9 year deal based on this year?
I thought I saw a report. Let me see real quick. I thought I saw something saying he was planning to maybe opt out, or he was like leaning that way.
If I were him, I would take that big money and try to play for another big contract next year.
Yeah, CBS Sports said a week ago that he's likely to opt out and become a free agent. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. But either way, I if he had made the move for Story, if he had made the move for Baez, they'd be considered a bust. So maybe they're better off having Isaiah Kiner Falefa, which is a weird sentence to say, because he's not exactly become a world beater there, but at least he plays decent defense. But they called up a kid. They called up a young player. What the heck was the kid's name? Who's a young shortstop? Oswaldo Cabrera. Oswaldo Cabrera came up. He's kind of he plays a little bit all around the infield. He's played 4 games in the big leagues, made some nice plays at shortstop. So he may wind up getting the job.
Well,
so,
hey, September's about to roll around. Why don't we just, pull the bandage off and, hit the red button for the big trigger and call up Anthony Volpe, the real shortstop of the future for the Yankees?
Why not? At this point, like you've seen, sometimes you've had situations where a player has been called up late in the year and they become a big, it happened with the Yankees in 1998 when they brought up Shane Spencer very late in the year and Ricky Leday really late in the year. And Spencer started hitting home runs left and right. And Leday became a huge factor in the World Series. They were barely there that season. And the Red Sox in 2007 brought up Jacoby Ellsbury pretty late. And by the end, he was starting in place of Coco Crisp. And Jacoby Ellsbury had a fantastic World Series against Colorado in 2007. There are instances where that happens. So what's the worst that could happen? Maybe that'd be the sort of thing that will ignite and give the Yankees a spark.
Yeah, and looking at Volpe, he's still in Double-A right now, so he probably won't get called up this year. But really what they need, because there are reports they should be coming back soon doing some rehab stuff, is Giancarlo Stanton, because we can't forget Stanton is still a legit all-star and potential MVP guy, and he's a big piece to be missing from that lineup. Like, we know we're giving the Yankees a lot of crap. Their offense has not been good this past month. It's really just been Trevino, Judge, and Donaldson that's carried that offense the last 3 weeks. And getting someone like Stanton back, who's just such a big threat in that lineup, like when you see him come up to the plate, it's a different level of player than when other guys show up to the plate, because they're just a level of fear as Stanton strikes into the opposing pitcher. So I think that would be a huge boost for this. Like, that's not a hot take saying Stanton's going to be a huge boost to the Yankees lineup or anything like that, but I think they desperately need him right now, because you just need someone other than Judge to be a threat to the opposing pitchers.
And keep in mind, the Yankees have had a garbage month and a half. They're very capable of having 2 good weeks. They're very capable of having 2 good weeks in October. And all of a sudden they win the pennant and all of this is forgotten. It is not outside the realm of possibility that Garrett Cole wins his 2 games in the division series and they sneak 1 more game. And next thing you know, they're in the ALCS facing off against Houston. And, then they're rejuvenated. We all know that could happen. I just don't see this particular team doing that.
No.
By the way, I want to just bring up another team. We're going to try not to go super long on today's episode here. Another team that had a wild trade deadline and was the universal pick of the team to have won the trade deadline was the San Diego Padres. And the Padres, of course, acquired Juan Soto, but they also acquired Josh Hader from the Milwaukee Brewers. And remember, they had a doubleheader sweep of Colorado, including a walk-off game, and then they got news of Juan Soto, and everyone was saying, oh my God, let the feast begin in San Diego, and they're 8-10 since then. They've been the definition of mediocre, and instead of solidifying their spot in the wild card with an eye at the division, sort of drooling at that, as of this recording, they are in the second wild card spot, a half a game ahead of Philadelphia, but they're tied in the loss column with Milwaukee, who is on the outside looking in. They're not running away with anything.
No, it's actually so funny that both the teams from the Josh Hader trade are not doing good because the Padres, they acquired Josh Hader and he's just absolutely wet the
He's
bed
been
since being
terrible.
acquired. He's got, if you look at just his Padres ERA, it's a 16.2 right now, 6 earned runs and just 3.1 innings pitched. They're going with the freaking closer committee right now. Like, you don't give up 5 players for Josh Hader to go with the committee once you acquire him. Like, he's supposed to be a superstar level closer, and right now it's not working out for you for the San Diego Padres. And if you look at the Brewers, like, they've lost a whole bunch of games late through their bullpen. They have had trouble closing games since trading Josh Hader. So it's like one team traded away an all-star closer and now they can't close these games. One team traded for an all-star closer and they still can't close games. So it's just funny from both those perspectives. And if you're a Friars fan, like, you just gotta feel terrible. Like, the Yankees fans and the Padres fans, like, I don't know who should feel worse. I think probably Padres fans might actually just feel worse just because you don't like have anything to build off of basically in recent memory. At least the Yankees have been in the race and, you know, they're the Yankees, the historical franchise. But if you're the Padres, like, what are you holding on to?
Oh, but it's much worse for the Padres for this reason. Think of the reasons why here. First of all, as bad as the Yankees have been, they are still in the lead of the division. And not just the lead of the division, that they would get a bye during the wild card round. Okay. And again, if you asked any Yankee fan at the beginning of the year, would you be happy with the second best record in the American League and skip the wild card round? You ask 100 Yankee fans that you get 100 yeses. The Padres are hanging on by their fingernails to a spot in the extended playoffs. This coming after a year where they were supposed to be a World Series contender, and they not only fell out of the playoffs, they ended with a losing record. And so this could be the second straight year where something like that happened. But not only that, when they spent all the money to bring in Machado, they spent in all the money to bring in the Darvishes and all these other people. And this year they traded away. Everything wasn't nailed down to get Hader and to get Juan Soto. And to look at that wouldn't even be enough to clinch. Like, if Milwaukee with their pitching staff needs realistically one good week and one bad San Diego week to push the Padres out of the playoffs. It's now late August. There's only about 40 games left. We're nearing the point where it's no longer even looking at the talent or the roster. It's like, that's in 30 days, anything can happen. Anyone can have a bad month. And so, we're getting to that point where San Diego fans, and I've called San Diego Buffalo by the Sea because they are a cursed fan base who can't even get the respect of a cursed fan base because they're living in one of the most beautiful, warm cities in in the entire country.
Pretty nice.
It's pretty nice living in San Diego. It's not like you're shoveling a driveway in Buffalo thinking about your team losing. You're on the beach with a Corona, watching your friends surf, thinking about how the Padres lost that game. It's not quite the same sense of pathos, but still, I think that actually gives me more sympathy for them because they don't even get the sympathy. But the Padre fans supposed to be looking around, going like, "I can't believe it. We still may not make the postseason."
And it's like,
it's unbelievable.
And it's like on paper, you make all the right moves. It's like you try to upgrade the Eric Hosmer position. Like Javier Reyes of Locked On Padres had a great tweet about pulling off the Josh Bell mask, and underneath there's Eric Hosmer because the ground ball rate for Josh Bell has been incredibly high. The WRC plus has been incredibly low for Josh Bell. It's basically been Eric Hosmer 2.0 for the Padres. So I know Javier Reyes has been super upset about that. Right now, their best starting pitcher in the month of August has been Blake Snell, which has been like he's been the dark horse of that. No, not in a good way, the dark horse. He's been like the black sheep, I should say, of that rotation since being acquired. And right now in the month of August, he's the best one because Sean Manaea has not been great. Musgrove and Darvish both have a 4 ERA in the month of August. Like, if you're like the Padres, you're like, everything has flipped since the trade deadline. Everyone that struggled in the first half is now on fire in the second half. And then everyone who was maybe struggling in the first half is now the ones carrying your team in the second half. So it's like you just never feel like all the pieces are on the same or playing in unison. If you're the Padres, like, it just like, why are all these pieces never feeling connected? We're never a team or never in unison. It's a lot of individual talents that play well at certain moments, but it's never like a collective team. That's got to hurt if you're the Friars.
Again, all is forgiven if they make the postseason.
Yeah.
But here we go. But hey, look, we're getting to that point. It's officially late August. It's officially late August, and we're pretty soon we'll be in the final month. And I have a thing. I have a mentality, which is if your team is in a spot, if you wake up the day after Labor Day, the Tuesday after Labor Day, if you wake up and you check MLB.com or the newspaper, however you get your news, and you see that your team is a playoff team, at that moment, the general manager can tip their caps and say, you're welcome, because they've given you a summer. You've had a summer where your team, the Padres have not had one day since Memorial Day that they've not been one of the playoff teams. So if you're a Padre fan, you've woken up every day this summer. How's their team? Well, they'd be a wild card team. So in some sense, they've given you what you wanted, which is a fun summer. That being said, at some point, you would love to cash that in for a fun fall too. When the leaves turn brown, they want to see the hats that are brown somewhere playing in October. But hey, this fall, we're going to be continuing going through all the pennant races, along with Miller Thomas, myself, and we have a bunch of the Locked On hosts popping on here, popping their mouths, and seeing what's going on here. So, Miller, any final thoughts before we wrap up today?
Final thoughts. I mean, D-backs got swept by the St. Louis Cardinals. Goldschmidt came in and just dominated the series, so you don't like to see that. But D-backs, they got some great call-ups. Stone Garrett, he looked great this past week. He looks legit. Corbin Carroll should be on their way. Jake McCarthy's a dude. Their outfield, they got like 5 or 6 outfielders for only 3 spots. The future of the outfield for the D-backs is looking bright, and that's what I want to say to end the podcast.
Man, how can the Diamondbacks get a player like Goldschmidt? I mean, he would fit right in perfectly with that team, don't you think?
Oh, man, if we had all those outfield pieces I just mentioned and a Rojas and a Christian Walker, a Ketel Marte, and then you throw Goldschmidt in there, that's like an all-star lineup right there, Sully.
Then we're living in Arizona summer. That's what we're doing.
No, that's hot. Yeah.
Well, hey, no, probably not. Miller Thomas, where can people find you?
Hey, follow me on Twitter, my personal account at CreatorThomas24. Follow the show account, Locked On Diamondbacks. Just type it in the search bar on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, follow us on YouTube, Locked On Diamondbacks there. And we're on all your podcasting platforms.
And we're at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and on Instagram. Check us out on all your podcasting platforms. Make sure to tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On MLB. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Seeing the season and everything getting interesting. This has been the Locked On MLB, Locked On Diamondbacks crossover. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. That's Miller. Both of you, including myself, everyone calls me Sully. Let's fist bump. I don't know what I'm saying.